Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. So it turns out that Samsung Galaxy phones, you don't want to leave them in long-term storage, unused, and in maybe a unjuiced state, because according to the Mr. Who's the Boss channel with his little test that he ran, they tend to, explode is probably too big a word to call it, but they actually expand and break the back panel off. Before we get into that, though, I was impressed just with his video anyway, that he's got a room in the basement with every phone ever manufactured, all neatly stacked in a row, almost like museum-like. I guess if he had the means or could be bothered doing it, that'd be a nice little nerdy hobby to have. I thought it was kind of fun.
I guess if you're in the business, sure. The rest of it might just be called junk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's interesting though that the key takeaway, I guess, is from his video was that it was particularly the Samsung models where this was occurring, which I'm not going to speculate on all the technical reasons as to why that is, other than if none of his other model phones that he had on hand were doing it, there must be something wrong in the manufacturing process or the whatever it is that Samsung's using for their batteries. And given the history with the exploding Note 7 and all that stuff,
I was going to say this isn't a first for Samsung.
It's a concern, isn't it? Like, wouldn't you second guess buying a Samsung phone? Like, I know that it would have to be in long-term storage and not being used and all that. Like in a day-to-day usage situation, we hope it's not going to happen. We haven't heard any reports of it happening, but you'd have to question whether you'd actually, if something like that could happen, why would you buy them?
Well, it's a good point you make. I mean, we've had over the years, and this goes a bit broader than Samsung, but a number of brands where, particularly laptops, where the laptops have lost shape due to the batteries expanding and warping the casing. So, batteries are a huge issue, especially as everyone tries to go for more storage now, and they develop probably more cutting edge technologies in terms of batteries, and we don't quite know how it's going to go. And of course, none of the testing involves just storing them without charge. So this is something that I guess you only find out when you've got a collection of old phones.
Well, and again, I think he kind of acknowledges this in his video, that this is kind of an extreme kind of niche thing, because he's a YouTuber. He reviews tech for a living, so it makes sense that he's got 1,000 phones in his basement, because he's had to review every model that's ever come out. And I'd feel fortunate if I was earning that much money off YouTube that I could afford to do that, as a thing, and have a basement with all those phones in it. But I guess maybe the last thing I wanted to touch on with this is whether or not Samsung responds to it in any way. I haven't actually checked as of when we're recording this whether they have or not, but I would think that they'd want to take some interest in whether or not this causes any blowback, and whether or not they actually need to think about how they manufacture the phone.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I guess as a bit of an Apple person, I've always found Samsung's quality dubious. And I think I've always been of the mindset that if you buy a Samsung phone, it's probably for the duration of your initial contract. So I don't know, is this, it might not be an issue if you're someone who just upgrades every couple of years and doesn't really think about the phone or recycles it. It's probably not an issue, but goes to show that you probably don't want to keep these phones for much longer than that initial contract.
And if not playing into the iPhone's hands, at least it helps the Pixel at any rate, and any other type of Android phone. All right, let's move on. I love this story about NASA's DART mission. It's kind of like the first tangible step to figuring out a way to deflect a planet-killing asteroid. And the thing that really excited me about the footage from this was just seeing how excited they all were when they confirmed that it actually hit the target as intended. And I don't know if the numbers are right, but they were 7 meters off target from I don't know how many, 17 million miles away, or however far away it is. How good is that in terms of accuracy to be able to pinpoint that kind of a target
Yeah, look, I think you're right. And what's interesting about this is when you think about all the excitement of smashing this probe into an asteroid, you forget actually the science or the technical skill behind this. It's amazing. And also, what's amazing about only missing the target by 7 meters is that when they were en route, like there was a minute delay in comms to the craft. So effectively, the craft has done that automatically. That's autonomous systems at work. So to be that accurate at that distance, and we've seen this anyway in the last year with the James Webb telescope. The precision, the position, and the accuracy with which that's sort of gone and worked, and now this goes to show that we are doing an amazing job in space. And I think our technology and our capabilities in space now, we'll see over the next decade, are really starting to amaze us again, just like they did back in the original moon race.
Absolutely, and obviously, and there was an Australian connection to this too, with the Canberra Deep Space Communication Complex assisting NASA with its redirection test because it had its antennas pointed at it or something and was tracking it and everything. So I think that's another aspect to this type of work as well, is that it's not like one country doing it, because it requires a planetary effect support, given that depending on what direction the planet's facing at any given point, you need to have someone on the other side of the world tracking this as well.
Oh, it's a total world effort, and it's amazing that we can do it. I think it's as simple as that. And if there's anything that will unite the planet in a single goal, it's got to be the pursuit of excellence in space.
Absolutely. All right, our next two topics to round out our episode today. I don't know if you call it gross incompetence in both occasions or not. Alarming at any rate. We'll start with the Optus data hack, and that's been the headlining story for the past week about how significant a data breach that actually was for customers, and kind of points to some soul searching, I would think, in terms of how on top of security, like data security, any sort of company or organization has to have in place to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen. And I'm sure with the way the media is running the story, that most of the population's freaked out about it, and then you got to wonder if will Optus survive, given this type of a breach, because there's bad news days, but for them, that was a really bad news day.
Well, yeah, but let's face it, they might spend a lot of money on protecting their network, but this was the admin system that was hacked. And, despite Optus's claims, it probably wasn't a very sophisticated attack. Once you get in, you basically take all those details, and those details were quite obviously not properly protected. As a Optus customer from 20 years ago, I wonder, is my data in there and Optus doesn't even know about it? I don't think we can really tell the extent of this attack, but we do know the implications, and they're not that people might have their banks or bank accounts hacked or anything like that. It's more that with the information that's being taken, identity theft will be very easy, and that can throw not only a personal life but also a whole economy into a very serious situation.
And I guess the other question too is obviously they need certain data when you're applying for a service or whatever, but there was a question over why did they have so much of certain types of data as well, which I thought was interesting too.
I thought that was interesting because that's standard. I mean, mobile phones are the most heavily regulated since 9/11. They're the most heavily regulated device that you can have. I mean, if you make any call on a phone, certainly in Australia, they can trace you. The SIM card, the phone, the location, they know who it is, or they know how that phone came into being. So, and that's because they have all this data. And I think that this is now maybe a sign of the times where 20 years on, it now is actually an issue, because once again, once that data is accessed, you can throw an entire economy into turmoil.
Mm, absolutely. Speaking of throwing an entire economy into turmoil, what's going on in the UK these days, Steve? It just boggles the mind in terms of the trajectory from what the Brexit vote was in 2016, and then you think about how the country's gone in the last 5-6 years or so, and this latest sort of ripple with this mini budget being announced, and then sending a wave of panic through all of the UK markets, and obviously there's a ripple effect that then extends out from the country, and you just got to wonder like what's going on there, because it's rare that you get then like a centralized institution like the Bank of England actually stepping in and effectively rebuking the policy of the government with actions that they take, and then just about everyone lambasting them from pillar to post that this was the absolute wrong move to do. And it's hard to tell where, and to be clear, this is all a question of confidence, I guess, in the market. And regardless of whatever steps are taken, something has obviously gone wrong to shatter the confidence of what's going on in the UK economy and the market there. And it's just, I just find it amazing that, with, a major advanced economy like that, that it's currently in the position that it's in, and it doesn't look like anyone's backing down from how it's going. It's a bizarre situation. I guess you wouldn't imagine that a country like the UK would be in a position like that.
Yeah, look, I don't know what any of us outside of the economic sphere or whatever it is can possibly make of this. We've gone from the GFC and then probably all the way to pre-COVID, the end of pre-COVID, where people were espousing modern monetary theory and governments can print as much money as they like and there will never be any consequences and it's all good and zero interest rates, etc., etc. During the space of 18 months, everything now seems like it's gone back 30 years. I don't know, 40 years. There's obviously a lot of problems in the global economy, and that's probably because we don't have a global economy like we did pre-COVID anymore. Geopolitical situations, etc., etc. The way I view it is that if you were targeting global growth with the current geopolitical situations and emerging economies and debt and energy and whatever else you want to factor in, you can no longer continue to grow. So if paying off your debt was predicated on growth, maybe that's the problem.
Yep, absolutely. It's certainly, when I think the other thing is like how it impacts, even just people on the street. I'd be feeling sorry for people in, the English at the moment who are trying to understand what all this turmoil is about. And it kind of hits them at that local level. Like if banks don't start giving out loans or things like that, or start hiking up, mortgage rates significantly, as a response, what kind of domino effect ends up happening, and it's sort of like real world hurt in a way that is really hard to see when it plays out.
I think we're in for a very considerable rebalancing. I wouldn't even begin to predict what that means or what it looks like, but things are definitely changing economically. Things are changing globally. And I think you factor all of these things in. We're going through a generational change as well, as we noted the other week with the Queen's passing. It's a lot for the world to digest, and I think that we're living through a time of turmoil, which probably, if you step backwards and look, into history, is probably a natural occurrence, but it doesn't make it any easier for those of us that have to live through it.
Absolutely. All right, on that note, we might wrap it up there, Steve. One final parting point, picking up a point from last week with using the new iPhone 14 Pro Max. I seem to get about 3 or 4 days of battery life out of it, but I'm a 2-hour-a-day user, so that I've been suitably impressed with it. And using cinematic mode, like I am again today, turned out really well. So hoping to keep using it. I'll let everyone know what some of the other features are as I use them, because I'm kind of keen to test out some of the Pro RAW and ProRes stuff and see how difficult it is to transfer those files onto the Mac, given how I think it should be anyway.
I'm glad to hear you're enjoying that phone, Ben.
Absolutely. All right, so don't forget to check out our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, and watch us on any and all of your devices. And we greatly appreciate your visits to our website and watching our videos. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.